Hello, hello, hello. I know I say this every time, but I'm super excited to be back again this week. Again, I love talking with leaders who not only talk about their work, but they embody what it is that they are not just trying to do, but are actually doing the transformation that is occurring because of the goodness that they are putting out into the world. And today's guest is no different. Hello, Mita. How are you doing?
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely, me as well. I love reading your work. I know you write for, I believe it was Fast Company was the last article that I read from you, and I love how you break things down because for many people they can kind of get in their heads and it's like, oh, but it's too difficult, it's too hard, and it's like, no, 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 this is how we do it. This is what it looks like, and that for me is brilliant in that a lot of super, super smart people, they wanna show how smart they are by mystifying all the rest of us. And so the fact that you don't do that is a blessing for so many of us.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you to say thank you. I write what I know and I write to explain things in a way I wish someone would explain to me. And so that's how I do it. So I'm glad that it resonates with you. Thank you.
It truly does, because one of the things that it helps, and not only others but myself, it helps you to identify how no matter where you are, you get to say, okay, well, I can use this, or I can take this piece and I can add it to this. And so it helps you to envision what a different path forward looks like.
Yes.
And so it really does, and you said it yourself, you write what you know, and knowing who you are and then being confident, right, in whomever that is, it truly does inform your choices. It informs how you
Mhm.
operate, how you move, the types of decisions that you make. And so I ask this at the opening of every single interview, but who do you say you are?
I'm still developing. I'm still I'm still developing. If I was to go a bit broader, I'm a passionate storyteller focused on multicultural marketing. I'm a diversity inclusion executive, and I am a working mother to Priya, who's 6, going on 16, Jay, who's 9, going on 19, and it's been a tough 19 months for all of us and also for caregivers in particular, but my story is still being written. I'm still evolving.
That was so good. Primarily because allowing yourself to, yes, be as powerful, as brilliant, as amazing as all the things, and then also to still honor the fact that there is still growth that can be had, is being had. It takes the pressure off. Like it kind of, even when you were speaking, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna borrow that. I am still
Please
evolving.
do, please do. We're all
I'm
still
gonna borrow
I think if anything, the last 18 months, 19 months have shown us that all of our stories are being rewritten in a way that so many of us thought they were written. This was the job, this was the city, this was the relationship, this was this. I had it all mapped out. I had the vision board and it all came. And so just to acknowledge that. And I think if we talk a year from now, my story will be different. I'll be in a different place. And that's okay. That's the beauty of growing and of just experiencing new things.
Oh, and I'm gonna tell you, so I just got chills with that because literally this morning when I was meditating, the one thing that I kept saying, because things have been so incredibly challenging for me lately, in moving and leaving my community and taking care of a very sick grandmother who had a stroke, and then a mother who has health issues. I literally was like, I felt like I was losing it. And the one thing that I kept saying in my head this morning, I'm like, your entire life can change in a year, but you have to be patient with yourself and be gracious enough to give yourself time. And what you were saying about you're still evolving, it's kinda like, for me, like the pressure valve where it's like, the spout when it's about to, like, explode on the stove, and it's letting you know, like, "Hey, we're too hot. We're hot now. Take us off, take us off." It's kinda like it turns the temperature down, so it's like, "Hey, there's no pressure. Relax. Breathe."
Absolutely. And your grandmother and mother are so lucky to have you and for you to talk about just showing yourself kindness and grace. And I think just to be intentional in what we're meant to be doing now And I think
Mhm.
oftentimes in my life, I was too busy chasing the title or what I thought I was supposed to do next or what people
Mm.
expected me to do. And so to just say to ourselves, this is what you're meant to be doing now. And that doesn't stop you from doing other things in the future. But if you can do what you're meant to do now really well and live in the moment, the rest will come. That's how I'm right now living my life. Ask me tomorrow. But that's today. My intention is to be here with you right now in this conversation.
So rarely ever am I rendered speechless, and that's what that moment was. It was me being rendered speechless because this is so affirming, especially in the be here now. What does now look like? And it reminds me, like, even when it comes to like our life's mission, it can change and it can evolve,
Yes.
right? It doesn't have to stay this, this static. And I think there's some growth really that is truly amazing that can happen if you agree and allow, things to be fluid. Like, what does fluidity look like? And fluidity can be super scary, right? But
Absolutely.
if you had to like sum it up, right? And even understanding like it is evolving, will evolve, continue to evolve. But if you had to sum up right now what your personal life's mission would be in one sentence, like what would that be?
I would say it's tied very much to my own personal mission and experience, and it's empowering those who have lost their voice to help them find it and to never stop using it once they've found it again. And so that is why I share so vulnerably, openly. That's why I was delighted when you asked me to join this conversation. And that's why I write so much about the things I've been through because I know I'm not alone in that. I know it's healing for myself, but also other individuals.
Absolutely is, especially the finding your voice and then using it. Growing up, and especially if you are a person of color, I don't know how it happened or why it happened, or, well, I do know the why for some of it, in that so many of us were taught, especially as children should be seen and not heard.
Oh my
So
God.
you
I hear
learn
from
very
you.
early,
Yes, yes.
like you learn early to shut up. And for me, it was, I love my mother and she was doing the best she could, but it was, if you're going to cry, cry quietly. That
Wow.
was literally what she said all the time. And it does something to your psyche in that you stop owning when you're in pain or when something doesn't work for you or when you don't like what's happening,
Mhm.
because there is this foundational principle that you are supposed to, and I was a wild one, right? I asked all the questions if things didn't make sense. I'm like, I don't agree. That doesn't work for me. And for her, it was a challenge because she was just like, "Shut up. Just
Ah,
don't rock the boat. Shut up." And so it made the journey to my own discovery of my purpose, it made it really challenging because it required, like you said, to use your voice once you found it. And if you've been taught that you're supposed to shut up and just accept what's happening, it becomes difficult. So that journey to discovering your purpose, it's definitely not linear, even if you were empowered to speak. But what did yours look like, and how are you still continuing to not only discover it, but show others, hey, these are the steps, like these are the practical steps. Like step one, what does it look like
well,
for
I'll
you?
tell you a little bit about my journey, and what you said was so powerful because and I know we'll talk about this. I have a podcast I started with my friend Dee
Yeah.
Marshall called Roundtable Talk, and it's all about helping women of color win at work and what allies can do to step up and show up. And Dee talks about it from her experience as a Black woman, and I as my experience as a brown South Asian woman. And one of the things we don't talk enough about is exactly what you said, our cultural upbringing. So for 18 years of my life, I'm raised this certain way. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I'm expected to act differently when I show up in corporate America. And just what you said, my father, love him, rest in peace, he always said to us, keep your head down, work hard, and stay out of trouble. And
Yep.
I'm the proud daughter of immigrant parents. And guess what? That doesn't get you recognized in large
Mm-mm.
organizations. Children are to be seen, not to be heard. Everyone's an auntie or an uncle. Sometimes I might freak people out. So we call Mr. and Mrs. I'm teaching my kids this. But what happens then is all of a sudden you're in meetings and in corporations and you're like supposed to argue with the CEO. you're supposed to defend your point of view, you're supposed to challenge. And I have this internal battle, but that's seen as disrespectful. That's rude. I'm not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And so that is the constant, even no matter where I've gotten to my career, even today, I have that
Mhm.
internal dialogue with myself. So that's a piece of the upbringing. I mentioned that I'm the proud daughter of Indian immigrant parents. I was born and raised outside of Boston with my younger brother, and I was the funny looking, dark skinned girl with a long, funny looking braid whose parents spoke funny English until it wasn't funny anymore. And I was bullied a lot, both verbally and physically, growing up by my peers. And that feeling of exclusion is something I don't want anyone to ever feel. And that's part of
Yeah.
my life's purpose. The purpose found me. It's been a part of who I've been. It was buried deep because it was really
Yeah.
painful to talk about. And as
Yeah.
I started talking about it, I was like, wow, I'm not alone. Other
Yeah.
people have experienced this, and my husband is also first generation, Indian American descent, and years after we've been married, I started sharing some of these stories. He's like, "You've never shared this with me," and, like, I've been through similar things, and so I
Yeah.
just think there's a lot of healing and community and a lot of learning, especially for allies, if you can, be present and really listen to what individuals from other communities, from different life experiences are trying to share with you.
Absolutely. And that be present and be willing, right?
Yes.
Because you can be willing and not be present. Like you can have a full on conversation. I'm willing to listen, but I've got all these other things. So I'm
Mhm.
not, yeah, I'm missing.
Yep,
We're two ships. I see you, you see me. I'm willing to hear you, but I'm not really present. So thank you so much for sharing. And now I'm going to go back to doing everything else that I was doing.
absolutely.
Understanding, like, and I tell people all the time, I recently was doing an event with Publicis Group working with the young people in communications and journalism, public relations, showing them, hey, this is how you, once you're in corporate America, this is how you ensure impact. This is how you ensure your growth. I will not tell you to work harder. That is disrespectful to who you are because most people of color, they know how to work hard. They've been trained to do that. That
Yes.
is, what is a B when you can get an A? What a C? Oh, that's unheard of. What are we talking about
Where's
here?
the extra credit? Where's the extra credit?
Exactly. I
With
went to summer school every year by choice from middle school to high school. Why? I started college in high school because I needed to do more. I had to do more. But what nobody told me is you just working hard will never get you there.
work smart, not hard.
You have to work smarter. When you get
Yeah.
into an organization, take those first 30 days to survey the land. Figure
Yes.
out who makes the decisions, who are the people who you need to make an ally or make a mentor or position them to become a sponsor for you by doing projects with them. Like this has
I
to
love
be
this.
strategic.
I love what you just said because I would show up in a new job or assignment, head down,
I
getting it
used
all
to
done.
too.
And the question that you just asked is the first question you should ask when you start a new job is who do I need to know to
Yes,
make me in this role successful and the company successful? Because my success is
absolutely.
tied to the company's success. I had never thought about that till much later in my career.
Yeah, I didn't realize it myself. It's just like, no, I'm gonna show them I'm a good worker. I'm gonna do this. And I dispelled the myth and I stopped working super hard. Now, don't get me wrong, I get a lot done and I'm excellent at whatever I decide I'm going to do. But I was pregnant and I was having a very, very difficult pregnancy. My ex-husband was in the military, so he was gone and it's nearing the end of my pregnancy and they had told me he cannot come back for the birth, so I'm under duress at this point. And I am in this not interview, the year in, and my daughter was born in December, so I'm like huge. I'm huge. And I had gained 47 pounds, so I'm really huge. And I'm in this last year in meeting, and my boss says, I feel like you lost sight of what was most important. And I look at her, and then I look down at my belly, because again, I'm huge. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, before you would make this amount of calls, have this amount of outreach. And now, even though I was still making my marks, she's like, now you're down by like 10%. and you've lost sight of what's most important, so you won't be getting a raise this year." And I just looked at her and I'm like, you can't be this tone deaf. Like, this isn't it. And so from that day, I went on maternity leave and I came back and I had an entirely different strategy as to how I was going to operate. And literally, when I came back, I got 3 promotions in 1 year because I said, no, who do I need to connect with? Look, who can make decisions? Who has some
Amazing.
emotional intelligence? Because this one ain't me.
Amazing. That's
But it,
incredible.
but I needed that experience. And so many of us have to have that experience, and it helped me to walk my way into what was next for me. And you called it in your last article, well, the article before then, because I know you have another one that just came out. I told you I read them often. I'm a whole fan. um,
Thank
but
you.
you called it the Great Awakening, in one of your last recent articles, as to so why so many people are leaving the workforce in droves. And you made the most important point, which is honestly why I left that role that I was in with that supervisor, because I felt as though I did not belong. I'm like, you are so tone deaf.
Mhm.
I will never be able to make a home for me in this position, or at least feel as though I'm welcomed here. And so, what do you believe is like a starting point for organizations to begin to create that culture of belonging?
I think that the article you pointed out is particularly important because of the McKinsey research that I cite in it, which talks
Yeah.
about individuals are not leaving for the reasons that managers think they are, if you're really
Mhm.
honest. Because the easy excuse is to say, this industry has a high attrition rate. They got offered more money. They got offered
Mhm.
flexibility. They got offered free lunch, dinner, and breakfast and everything, and t-shirts and swag. And but the research shows, and this disproportionately impacts individuals of color, people are leaving because they don't feel like they belong. They don't feel seen. They don't feel valued. They don't feel recognized, exactly as you just recounted your own experience. And so that is the number one thing we actually, as leaders, have control over. And so
Mhm.
we're all busy chasing inclusive cultures. And guess what? Inclusive cultures comes down to me as the individual. How I show up every day has an impact and can have a ripple effect on my team and the entire company. And
Yeah.
so we have to ask ourselves, how do we show up every day for our teams and for our individuals? If you have new people who have started during the pandemic and you are working remotely, what have you done to onboard them? What have you done to connect them with other people? Another reason people leave companies, not surprising, is when you stop having friends there. When you stop having community, when your friends are all leaving or you feel isolated. And I think in particular, as I've been in many times in my career, the lonely only, managers being mindful and culturally competent to say, how might Mita be feeling as the only woman of color on a team of, let's say, 15 white leaders?
Yeah.
How might that experience be different for her? And it might not be, but as a manager, to be aware of that.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is just showing up with kindness and grace and constantly checking in with people. We're living in two pandemics right now. It's the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's the continued pandemic of racism. And that
Yeah.
is showing up in many different ways in many different communities, whether it's for the Black community and against the Black community and Black Lives Matter, stopping Asian hate. I mean, unfortunately, there are many examples. And so, how are you checking in on colleagues of color? If I need a mental health day and I need to take time off after I saw the woman who was walking to church in New York City in daylight, brutally attacked while people watched and didn't stop on video.
Yeah.
I see my mother, sister, cousin, and if that is deeply upsetting to me, and you as a manager don't understand why that's upsetting to me,
Mhm.
if you as a manager don't understand or have context of what just happened with the trial and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery and the conviction of 3 white men and the history in this country of lynching. If You don't understand that this is now.
Yeah.
It's running out. Educate yourself. So when your
Yeah.
employees are impacted, I'm never gonna understand how you feel completely, but I can start to gain empathy and seek to understand what your lived experience and what that might be like of your community, so
Yeah.
that I can show up with more empathy when, unfortunately, things are happening all the time, every day in our lives.
Absolutely. And you just said so much there. It literally is educate yourself. I
Yes.
tell my daughter all the time, like I have an 11-year-old. Um, and I am teaching her how to do her own research. So she'll ask me a question and I'll have the answer for the question. And sometimes I'll answer her because I don't want to always turn it into a teachable moment. But most of the time, I asked her, well, what did you do to find out the information before you asked me? And she's like, well, I just didn't feel like it. And I'm like, one of the greatest gifts you will ever have is the ability to learn things without people having to walk you through the process of them.
Mhm.
You taking initiative is something that I don't care how book smart you are. If you have some initiative, if you're willing to see something, Google what it is, how you can help, how you can do something. It's honestly how I've built some of my most impactful relationships
Yes.
in that I will hear someone say, well, this has been an issue I've been dealing with. I will Google it on my phone, find a reputable source, and then say, hey, you may want to check out this. I just found this in this article. If you give me your email, I can send it right over to you. Now I have just A, made myself an asset,
Mhm.
B, shown how I am a problem solver and people like folks who can solve problems for them. And C, I now have their contact information that I can now connect and build with them later. And so she's like, Mommy, it's not that serious. And I'm like, you're 11 now. So you're right. It's not as serious now.
Yes.
But I promise you, this will be something that you will take with you through the rest of your life. So Google it and then email it to me because I would like to know too.
I say to allies who come to me, and it's part of my job to do this work, I get paid to do it. You can Google what it means to be anti-racist. If you can Google the best banana bread recipe you ever made, or the tortilla hack, or whatever's trending on TikTok right now, you can Google what it means to be anti-racist. And so I think the challenge for us is, and you're laughing, but it's true, the questions people ask, you're like, this is Google. Google it. Why are you asking? And what I think is
Yeah.
what allies who are on their journey need to understand is that I think one of the most powerful forms of communication, the oldest in human civilization, is storytelling. We love to tell stories.
Yes.
Stories stay with people, they move people, they inspire people. But at what
Absolutely.
cost do you want to hear a story from a primary source where it causes them trauma to relive it? So if
Yes.
you are going up to a Black colleague and asking, what did you think of the murder of George Floyd? Why?
You can Google it. So many people
You
have
can
written think
Google it. There are
pieces.
so many things, and so what you have to understand is by asking that person that question, you are asking them to re-experience the trauma
Mhm.
of not just what they've seen, of what they've been through, but trauma that has been through their community for generations, intergenerational trauma. And so I always coach people to say, at what cost do you need to hear this from a primary source? And oh,
Yeah.
by the way, Google it.
I laugh because my sister and I, so my sister is she's my life partner, my best friend, my co-parent when I was getting divorced. Like she's sat with me and been with me through so many of my experiences. And we both have a similar, I guess, a dry humor in that we were in one of the stores, Home Goods, Hobby Lobby, one of them. And there was a little plaque that says, do I look like Google? And so
Oh, that's amazing. I need that plaque.
listen, it's the greatest. I'm pretty sure Etsy has it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why I laugh because I tell people all the time, hey, you carry an Encyclopedia Britannica. And I know I'm super dating myself, but when I was in college, I used to have to go to the library and look in the encyclopedia and go through the library catalog to find the information I wanted to know. I'd have to get the film and put it into the computer. I know most people are like, what is she talking about? It was a real thing. I don't look it, but I'm a little experienced. And so we used to have to like go outside of ourselves to find it. You're carrying an encyclopedia, use it. Open it up. Use it for good, okay?
Never
Lots of
forget.
people use it for bad. Use it for good. You can find what you need to know. And it's so funny too, not funny, but more there's an alignment there when you were saying purpose found you. When I was at 2012, I had decided that I was going to take my own life. I was in a very abusive marriage. My ex-husband, he was a psychology major, one of the smartest men I've ever met. And also one of the most challenging. He had a lot of things that he was working through. And so I had decided that I was worth less, that I brought nothing to the world, that my daughter was better without me. I had totaled 6 cars at that point. I was a terrible driver. It was really bad. And so I knew that if I had taken my life in a car accident, that my insurance company would pay out the $500,000 life insurance policy on my life so that my daughter could still be taken care of. People joke that they're like, oh my God, you're so organized. I can't help it. My mind is like a mini computer. And so I was setting everything up in my head so that she would still be taken care of. I was going to take my life January 2013. In December, I came back to my hometown to spend some really good time with my mother because I know how painful it was for her when she lost her first child. And so I was doing all the things that she loved so that she could have some really, really great memories of me. Um, After I was gone. Again, I'm very methodical, very strategic. I'm a project manager at my core. And so I was going to church with her every night, which is something that I didn't enjoy, but she loved. And after a church service, I walked past a girl who she looked like death and I felt like death. But on the outside, things looked perfect. I had just built a new home, driving a luxury vehicle. My ex-husband was fine as frog hair. That's a very Southern saying, meaning that they look really, really good. I had an amazing little girl who is and was at that time brilliant. And I literally felt like I was dying every day. Every day I had to roll myself out of bed. I had to talk myself into staying in the game. And when I met her and she looked how I felt, I asked her, can I help you? And she's like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, if I did, if I did like women, you're not my type. I really just want to help you. I was like, I'm a project manager. I really think that what I do, I could help you. And so I created a program for her. I found out she was a foster kid, aged out of foster care. She too was in an abusive relationship. So there were all these things. And what she did is she introduced me to purpose. And so the plan that I had to take my life that next month, I put it on hold indefinitely because I was introduced to purpose. But with purpose comes growth, and with growth, there are pains, right? There are some very real pains and frustrations that come when you are growing. It is not easy. When babies grow teeth, it hurts. It hurts. It's not an easy thing. And so, how have you handled like the frustrations and honestly, even that mental exhaustion that comes with real growth? Because growth isn't always a good feeling thing.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with me and all of us. And I'm so grateful to be here with you today. And I have lost family members who have taken their own life. So, um, super grateful to be here with you today. We have to manage our own energy
Mm.
and what we put out into the world
Yeah.
and what we also accept into the world. I'm on this kick right now of please help me say no. Please don't make me say yes, right? Please
Oh,
don't make me say yes. And so I think that is part of also like where the exhaustion and fatigue will come in for me. I want to help as many people as possible, which is why I started the
mm.
podcast, which is why I was delighted to be here with you discussing. And there's only so many hours and there's only me.
Yeah.
And so just to be clear and also just I always try to show up with kindness and grace. I'm like, I wish I could meet, I can't, but here's an article you might want to read, or here's a piece of advice or suggestion. And also when I say, please don't make me say yes, please help me say no. If
Yeah.
someone offers me something that I can't do, think about someone else who could do it. If it's a opportunity to take an assignment, a project, or a speaking engagement, or they need a mentor for someone, I might
Yeah.
say, I really wish I had time, but I have someone else who's amazing who would love this. And so that's a great way to pay it forward as well. And I think just in this world is not changing for us. We will return to the office in some way, and a shout out to frontline workers everywhere who never left their offices. And
Yeah.
so this idea of Zoom and technology, StreamYard, everything, it'll never go back to the way it was. And
Yeah.
so to be able to say, I was doing something yesterday where I said, "Hey, I'm on screen, but if everyone wants to be on audio, that's fine." Because
Oh,
you have to manage your time and how you're showing up. And I guess more broadly, like every day is a new day and tomorrow
yeah.
is not promised. I know that after really suddenly losing my father. So that changes
Yeah.
you when we talk about those pain points and growth. That has forever changed me and how I show up. And so I just try to live every day to the fullest that I can.
Oh man, and I say I love that a lot because I didn't experience a lot of love growing up in the way that I needed it. So now I maybe I overdo it, but I don't care. I feel like you can never have too much love. It's not like water.
Yeah.
So I'd say I love that a whole lot. You'll come to find out. But I really do love what you just said in that help me, don't make me say yes, help me say no. And in speakers, so I speak internationally a lot, when the world was open and it was super safe. And one of the things that I would always tell up and coming speakers is get on someone's turn down list. But I never thought of it in helping you to mitigate the frustration and the exhaustion is get someone who you trust to be on your turn down list to where, okay,
Yes.
this is what capacity looks like.
Forward. Yes.
Yeah, I never even thought of it that way.
Yeah. So just thinking about that and just it's so you must show yourself kindness and grace. If you can't show yourself kindness and grace, I don't know who you can show it to then. If you can't
Yeah.
show it for yourself first. And so you have to have those boundaries. One example is I remember a while ago helping somebody coaching them to get a job. They got the job and they were very excited. And then they connected me with someone else who needed help, who I didn't know. And so I said, I appreciate you so much for thinking of me. I just don't have the time right now to do this. It
Yeah.
also stops me from ghosting, which is another conversation, right? Because
Yep.
sometimes we ghost because we don't have the confidence or the conviction to say no, I can't do this right now. And so
Ooh.
we end up not responding and letting it just sit there, which is so much more painful and worse for the person on the other side, and we've all been on that other side. So please don't
Wow.
ghost people. But I said, I really can't. I'm happy to share some materials with you. And, let me see if there's someone else in my network, which I think I ended up finding someone for them. But that's just a tip that I have come to discover or stumble upon in the last 18 months.
Listen, you can be transforming whole lives with this, and especially the ghosting.
Oh,
Especially the
talk about the
ghosting.
ghosting. Oh, the ghosting. Painful.
I've done it myself, and it's not because I didn't want to, it's I had no more capacity. So what
Yeah.
does it look like to just say it? "Hey, I don't have capacity for this. However, here are some resources." And then if you have another person, if you don't have another person, like let's say finding someone else would also, take you past your capacity. Say, "Hey, I don't have the time right now, but hey, here's this resource, and you may want to check in this Facebook group or in this LinkedIn group or this membership."
Absolutely.
Mm, like, these
I
are
just had
options.
someone reach out to me recently. Someone made an introduction without asking me. I also say don't give away people's time without asking them. Don't give
Yes.
away your time. If I'm going to introduce you to somebody, I will send you a note first and say, "Can I make this introduction?"
Yeah.
I did that
Consent.
yesterday. And someone wrote me back and said, "I'd love to meet this person. Seems like a great talent." So when people do this to me, it puts you in a tight bind because then I can be accused of being the ghoster. But I was like, I
Mhm.
didn't know that I was going to have
Yes,
this
it
introduction.
is.
So then I wrote back and just said, so kind of you to reach out. My calendar is really swamped until the end of the year. Feel free to reach out next year. But they're not they're not waiting. So have the courage just to say, have the courage to own your boundaries and just to say, this is where I am right now. And then also, it's okay to just say no and say, I'm not the right fit for this conversation, or I can't be helpful. I might encourage X, Y, and Z. And then I also say, it's never too late to say no and just stop the ghosting, because what also happens is individuals commit to things.
Mm.
I'm guilty of this. I committed to something And I was like, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't see it through. I'm just not gonna respond to her email. It's gonna go away. It's gonna go away. And you know what? I just need to respond and say, I overcommitted. I
Yeah.
am really sorry. I cannot
Mm,
follow through, but here are ideas I have to solve. We could push this out. I could offer this instead, or I can find
mm.
someone else to do what you asked me to do."
This is so good. Like, it's kinda like I love mangoes, and mangoes are super
Oh, I
juicy,
love
and
that.
that's this
Yes.
conversation. Oh, it's just so juicy. It's so good. It reminds me, so I was listening to, your podcast, and I really love Brown Table Talk.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.
It's so good because you don't I haven't seen it, and I like anything that's, hey, not only is this something that has not been done before, but it's also something that is needed. Like, it's needed and it's necessary.
Mhm.
And so you were giving some really, really practical advice on how to protect yourself, how to protect your work. And what I wanted to see or wanted to ask you is, what does it look like for us to use our voice to proactively advocate for ourselves when needed? Like, if you know you're working on a project that's going to be presented to the CEO, sometimes you don't know where it's going to be presented. But what does it look like to say from the beginning, hey, I'm really excited about this project. When it's time to present, I would like to be included. Like, how do you suggest you, because that even like that felt like cringy for me to say. So, how do
Yeah.
you suggest we use
So,
our voice to do that?
that's a great question, and it's always a delicate balance depending on the project and the person and the individuals, but I always say, like, do the work and kick ass at it. So, do the proposal, show up for it, do it really, really well, and as you're doing it really well and they're seeing the values being delivered, when it comes time and you know there's a presentation, ask to have a seat at the table. And for any managers right now listening who are on the journey to be more inclusive leaders, the virtual table does not have a cap on seats. Let me just say that again. The virtual table does not have a cap on seats. So, this whole idea, which I understand, people don't want to invite a ton of people to meetings. The productivity goes down. I'm not suggesting that you invite me to stay for the 3 hours. What I'm suggesting is you include me to present my proposal to the leadership team, have me come in for the 10 minutes, do the presentation, and yeah, then I'm going to leave. I don't need to be there for the whole 3 hours, nor should I be.
Ooh,
And so that's the recommendation I would put forward. I would also say, and this recently happened to me and it was received really well. I came up with a new idea that wasn't within my like remit
yeah.
and it was received really well. And I said, I'd like to continue to run with this. And they said, of course,
Mm,
as we would expect. And I'm partnering with other individuals. But you have to ask for what you want. And you can't assume. So often I think people will read my mind. So often I think people will do the right thing. They don't. And so if you don't ask, you won't receive. So if you don't ask, and this is part of what I talk about, we go back to the beginning of cultural upbringing.
yeah.
I was taught not to ask because it was rude, it was impolite,
Mhm.
especially to authorities or figures who had any sort of power. You're supposed to trust, and unfortunately, we can't always trust individuals to do what you would do. And nor should people read my mind because there are some individuals who would say, actually, I don't want to present. I would encourage you to present. But if someone says, I can't make them, if they're like, I actually don't want to present this,
Yeah.
then you respect that. But you ask, you always ask.
I believe a lot of relationships, marriages, friendships would be saved by saying what ask for what it is that you want, ask for what it is that you need. I've been doing a lot of therapy lately. And one of the takeaways that I've been talking through with my therapist is that whole notion of, is if they cared, then they would, is completely unfair. It's completely unfair.
It is.
Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean if they cared, they would? They are a whole separate person dealing with their own traumas, experiences, upbringing, defaults. You can't expect that all of a sudden they're going to be here, especially if you're one and, or excuse me, since they are one and let's say they have a team of like 10. Listen, like, that's 1 to 10. Open your mouth. Even in going into an organization, I've,
Mhm.
coached folks who were like, well, my organization, they didn't care about, my growth. And the first question that I ask is who did you communicate the type of growth you wanted to? Who'd you tell?
Yes.
Well, I came in, of course I want to grow. No, everyone doesn't want to grow.
You
That's
told
not
me, myself, and I, and then you thought everyone else would figure it out. Well, I'd be guilty of
how.
that too. We all have, right?
I have too. And it's like, how did you expect that to be the case? Like, that's not fair. You're literally judging them by a conversation that you had in your head that you did not share with them. Houseway. That's not how it works. But then, too, I also understand that there is a thing called professional insecurity to where you feel as though you're either not equipped, you feel as though you shouldn't have even gotten the job, like you might not be able to, pull through. Some people call it, imposter syndrome. But I really do believe that imposter syndrome is literally just synonymous with insecurity. You're just insecure about your abilities. And so how have you, if you've experienced, like, how have you dealt with it? And then how do you help or coach others to manage theirs?
Yeah. Well, I definitely, as I've shared with you much of my early journey in my life, I have suffered from confidence, and it goes like this. I
Yeah.
suffered from a lot of lack of confidence after my father's death. There are different things that happen in our career. Confidence is not like this. It's not like once you get it, you got it, because it goes up and down because you are interacting with things that are happening externally and how
Yeah.
that's making you feel. I will also say there was a great article that two women wrote on imposter syndrome in Harvard Business Review and how women of color don't suffer from imposter syndrome. And I would argue that, yeah, there are times where I've lacked my confidence, and there are times other people did not believe in me. And their lack of belief allowed me to question myself. And I will no longer, never, ever let someone else define my worth. And so that is the other piece, is that if allies are listening, in particular to support women of color in the workplace, is that I don't suffer from imposter syndrome. Don't put that upon me,
Yeah.
and don't
Yeah.
make me doubt myself.
It's like, no, I was pretty sure I could do this thing until I got
That's
here. And
what you told me I
yeah.
couldn't.
And then now it's like, wait, what do you mean? So I can't, I'm not good at this? But I thought I was.
Yes.
How did
But
we get here?
but I would also say, like, it's when I go back to finding your voice and confidence, it is constantly for me practicing the muscle. So I had
Mm,
someone who worked for me years ago who was comfortable presenting in groups of 20, but got really anxious when it was over 100, in the hundreds.
mhm.
We all do. And we all need practice. And I would tell her, you have to practice. And this individual would laugh at me. And I'm like, no, I'm not an athlete. I'm super clumsy, but I do run fast. And like, when I look at athletes that I admire, there's a lot of practice. And anything that you want to be good at, there's a lot of practice and training. So practice using the sound of your voice. So early on, when I would be walking into a room, when back in the day there'd be 50 open seats in a live room, I would go sit in the radiator. I was
Oh.
in the back because I was, like, so concerned about, am I gonna say the wrong thing? What if they call on me? I don't want people to see me. And
Yeah.
so everything, practice sitting right up front, practice speaking first, practice asking a question.
Mhm.
Don't leave the room until your voice has been heard, because somebody believed in you to give you a seat at that table. Somebody thought you should be in this meeting. So I always say, this is the flip now for me. My trick, don't disappoint them, Mita. They invited you for a reason.
Yeah.
So, and they're paying you for your expertise.
Listen,
So make your voice heard.
whew, this is, again, I just really, really love affirming and awakening types of conversations. I don't like the fluff. I've never really been good at the fluff. I don't do small talk well. I don't care how the weather is. I have an app for that. The app will tell me how the weather is. And because I've been living long enough, I can figure out what the mood will be based on the weather. I don't need to discuss it or talk about it. I don't like
Yes.
small talk. But these types of really rich conversations, it ignites my spirit and gets me excited to
Oh,
tackle the day, the week, the month. And so one of the things too is everybody, like you were saying, they don't know how to make the ask or even exercise the muscle. And after I had come back from maternity leave, from listening to that boss tell me I had lost sight of what was most important while dealing with a high risk pregnancy that she knew about, um, And I told her I'd made that decision that, okay, I'm going to get some different, we're going to do something different this
Right.
time. I had gotten into a role where we were working with LinkedIn, the WNBA, creating one of Kaplan University's first MOOCs. And a MOOC is massive open online courseware, basically free classes you can take
Wow.
that you don't have to pay for, but you could get credit for them. And so we were working on it. The team that I wasn't really on that team, but I sat next to the team. So in my mind, I was on the team. And so we all had the same COO. And so I overheard an argument, and they were really, really frustrated with the project manager. And I was like, they're frustrated. She's frustrated. I used to mitigate because I'm the oldest of four. I used to mitigate like arguments and issues. And I had my first business when I was 12. So I know how to get things done. I can take something from my head to my hand. They're frustrated because they're over budget. They are totally off schedule. The timeline is just blown.
Right.
What would it look like if I went to the COO, asked him to train me as a project manager, pay for the certification as a scrum master, and
Wow.
take it out of the budget, the learning and development budget that
Yes.
they have. I know they have it. What would it look like for me to ask it? And so what I did is I put together a little quick proposal. It was 1, 2 pages. It was not long, just of how it would benefit the organization. I knew that the lady was going to leave because she was so pissed. And again, I had been listening to the conversations for quite a bit. And so I said, well, hey, you're going to lose a project manager soon. What does it look like to promote someone from within? She'll most likely give you a 90-day, time frame to find someone. What if I was that someone? And I gave him the reasons why. I had never been a project manager in my life. But I told him, based on previous history with my siblings, how I would raise money and how I would get things done. And he was like, I think I like it. And he said, yes. He brought in one of the best
Amazing.
from Apple to teach
Amazing.
me. I was so excited when it worked. I was doing a little dance in my car, but
Yeah,
I aligned what I wanted to learn to the business, the business goals.
that's
And
amazing.
so how do you or what do you feel, or how can folks, because I like practical things, I like to, what's
Yes.
step one, how do you believe, or what are some of the best ways for team members to advocate for themselves, yes, but also to, how can you show them, or what can we do to show folks how to leverage their organization's learning and development, like opportunities or budget, to create their own, paths, like own growth paths in their careers?
Take control of your career. You're in the driver's seat. For too long, I was waiting for an organization, somebody to show up with a magic wand and I don't know, do something, anything,
Yeah.
help me out. But that's not how it works. You have to own your own career. And so I love that example. If you have an idea, put it down, proposal. They might say no the first time, they might say yes the second time. If you have a
Mhm.
conference, if you have a coaching circle, you have something you've seen, get the cost and go to L&D or through your manager. There is
Mm.
usually budget in companies to help upskill individuals and use it to your advantage. Like we talked about, it is not the Great Resignation, it is the Great Awakening. And
Yes.
so it is an employee's market right now, and everyone wants to hold on to great talent. So ask before you walk out the door. Right? Ask before you walk out the door. And the other thing I would say, your example is great. You saw a problem, you figured out a way to solve it, and also it also met your passion and needs, and they said yes. The other piece of advice is, if they keep saying no, it's time to vote with your feet and go somewhere where you are celebrated and not tolerated. I will say that again, where you are celebrated and not tolerated. So at some point, you want to give your organization, absolutely, give people the chance to make it right, do right by you, meet your requests and needs. But if you're asking for feedback and if you keep asking for the same things and too long has passed, then you've got to take control. And I have been in moments in my career where I waited too long.
Mm.
And I don't regret that, except to say, I have to take control. No one's going to do it for me.
It was the magic wand for me.
Oh, the
Like,
magic wand. I'm looking for my daughter. My daughter has a magic wand. It's not in the room. But yeah, the magic wand. I am the magic wand.
Yes,
And then
yes.
I have the power, uh, I have the power to unlock my own destiny, and
Oh,
I can't wait for someone else to do it for me.
listen, again, this was like a good juicy mango
Oh,
at
thank
the
you.
peak of summertime. This was so,
In my
so good.
turtleneck in, winter in Jersey City, but yes, I love a good mango. Thank you.
That's okay. I'm in Florida right now, and so
Yes,
I'm gonna take the heat and say,
you
"Okay,
will,
we
thank you.
technically still have mangoes." Oh, this was good. So where can we stay connected? Definitely let us know where can we listen to Brown Table Talk?
Yeah.
Where can we find your writings, your just all the things?
Please find me on LinkedIn. Please follow me on LinkedIn. That's my primary place. I'm also on Instagram. And please listen to Brown Table Talk. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on wherever you can find your podcast. Dee and I would be thrilled. And it's not just for women of color, it's also for allies because we need everyone's help to make sure women of color are not just surviving, but thriving at work. And that's our goal.
Yes, it makes no sense to survive when you can actually thrive. I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This time spent with you has truly been a highlight of my month. And I know the month is just starting, but that's not the point. It has been a highlight and it will
Thank
maintain and
you.
remain the
Yes.
highlight. Thank you. Thank you. So until next time, make sure you guys stay connected. I can be found everywhere at Alechia Reese. And you can also join our community, gotvaluenation.com. I cannot wait to continue to have these types of conversations that are so life affirming and life changing. Thank you so much, Mita.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Got Value podcast. Remember, there is true value in purpose, and the greatest discovery of your life will be exactly what yours is. Stay connected with us at gotvaluenation.com.